to organize your amazing ideas into a powerful book? You are in the right place.
At the right time to learn how to write your book.
Hi, I'm Joyce Glass.
And I'm Sherry Lynn Bisbano, and welcome to the Write Hour Nonfiction Tips from the Write Coach team. We are so glad you joined us today.
Welcome to episode 1205 of the Write Hour. I have another rising star for you to meet today. Adrian Marable shares his writing journey and how it sparked an idea for a business for him. We discuss ways to turn your book into a business and a brand. Adrian is a founding member of the Write My Book Bootcamp and is now creating a podcast to further his reach. He's a writer, speaker, and angel investor who focuses on the long-term growth of businesses. His ability to touch different areas of business has been amazing. The impact he's made with the firms he's worked with has created better transparency among the different teams and the feeling of empowerment by these employees to do more than just their daily job. The initiative he takes to learn about people and how to grow their careers and knowledge while growing and scaling a company has brought more efficiency and retention to the teams he has helped. His passion is around business operations, growing talent, and creating safe, inclusive environments, which makes him an amazing venture capitalist. May his writing journey inspire you. All right, I'm excited today to have with me another one of the Write Coach success stories. Welcome, Adrian.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. And Adrian, met him a couple of years ago. It's been like 3 or 4 years now, hasn't it? And we kept in touch, and he had this really good book idea. But by the time he actually got to work with me, he said, I've got a totally different idea now. And so that's kind of what happens with time, is our ideas change and morph. But tell us a little bit about you and then your journey to becoming a writer.
Okay. Well, I first want to say I still want to write that original book that I thought of, but I felt like where I am in my life now is, a lot different than it was, 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago. And this was a perfect time for me in my career. I've been an entrepreneur since I was a child. My parents taught me about money early. They taught me about sales, relationships, and then, I've gone to college and done all of these things. And I became interested in, mergers and acquisitions. And, I learned a lot from the jobs that I worked in. I was like, you know what? I really like this private equity stuff and buying and selling businesses. And that was kind of the direction I wanted to go. So about 2 years ago, I met this guy who I'm actually on vacation with right now as we're going through this podcast. And I decided, it was a perfect time to start investing. He owned a private angel investing firm with a group of investors. And, I invested in my first company at the beginning of 2019. And it's been just a crazy journey ever since. When I got into this area, I just became a student of angel investing and everything that it entailed. And personally, I was just taking a lot of notes. Questions I could ask, why should I ask them? Why it's important that I ask these questions. And I ended up with over 200 questions.
Oh, wow.
And then when we spoke again, I was like, I have these questions. I could probably turn this into a book.
Yeah.
And here we are.
With a book that is, well, I'm finished editing it. You're still perusing back through it. But
Yes.
What really got you interested in the angel investing? Because that's a little different from your 9-to-5 job, which you do. So what kind of spurred that idea?
So the angel investing, it was almost by happenstance for me, really, because, I knew that I wanted to be in that industry of buying and selling businesses, investing in businesses, but it was really just meeting this guy through, a couple of, business partners that I had. So I do have a 9-to-5 job. And then on top of it, I have, a startup business. And, through that startup business, I met some really, really great people who introduced me to the guy who's now the managing partner of this investment firm. And I felt like that was a really good fit into the private equity space. To start at angel investing and looking from the perspective of an entrepreneur who has gone through, pitching their business and going through the due diligence and all those processes in order to get funding. So as a founder, I've been through that. And now that I've joined the fray of investors, I felt like I had a perspective from both angles.
Right.
And I've had a lot of people ask me to meet them for coffee or lunch or dinner to kind of pick my brain about angel investing and how I got into it and what could they do. And that's when, it was really more prevalent to me to write the book.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense because now you could say, instead of, because there's only so much time in the day and only so many coffees you can do, that you can say, hey, I've written a book, here it is. And what I love, and the next question I have for you is, how do you want this book to help people? But what I love, and this is something that you and I talked about when we started working together, is like, okay, I've got these two different angles. How am I going to put them in one book? Because technically it could be two separate books, one for founders and one for investors. But I said, well, why don't you marry the two and give both perspectives? And that's what you did. And I love how you kind of broke the book up, because some of it is more from the founder's perspective at first, right? And then and then it moves to more of the investor perspective. So you have them both in there. And the other thing I thought that was so unique about this is, and you can tell us more about this, there isn't really a book like this. So explain that in this question.
Yeah, that is true. So a lot of due diligence conversations, or what happens after the pitch to get funding, is, usually for businesses at larger stages, they're about to be bought or sold. They're going to the IPO stage, which is initial public offering, which means they're going to have a code on the NASDAQ or a stock ticker number. So a lot of the books that I read was, for the more mature business.
Right.
And then I felt like, from a founder's perspective, some of the questions, we've seen them on Shark Tank and all these other TV shows, but there's never a reason, there's always different questions that you could ask. But, people don't understand, well, why did he ask me that question? It doesn't make sense, because, I gave him this pitch. So why should he or she ask me this additional question? It just doesn't make sense.
Right.
And then, from a angel investor standpoint, no one's giving people the knowledge to getting it into startup investing, because there's so much red tape behind it. And, there's some easy ways to get into it. And, there's some networking you can do to get into it, but there's also some government regulations involved. So a lot of people don't talk about that. They just see people doing it and they say, I want to do it too, because it sounds like the newest, trend in investing. So I haven't found a book like that. And to give it from both angles, I think really adds a lot of support to it, because me being from both sides and knowing others of both sides who I've interviewed, people, who are angel investors, learning some common mistakes. I've interviewed entrepreneurs, get their perspective on funding. And I just haven't seen that in the industry. And to put it, like you said, to put it together from both perspectives, I think really has helped those who have, gotten a preview of the book so far.
Wonderful. And I love that. I love that, because it's the same topic. And some founders like you may become investors, and some investors may become founders. They may decide to start their own business and they need some funding, and then they'll understand the process from the other end even better. So I like that. Well, what has this writing process taught you about yourself?
Oh man, it has taught me patience for one.
What did you have to be patient with?
The editing process for me was a little long, longer than I expected to be, but it was a good long, right? Because I want it to be right when it's published. Also, there's book proposals and marketing that has to be done, and it's made me really look at myself as a brand. How do I want to create a business around this book and whatever else comes with it, coaching, speaking, consulting, whatever. So it's made me learn more about myself. And, I think you kind of mentioned a little bit about what you want people to get out of the book. And I had to ask myself first, like, what is my brand? And I did this exercise a couple of years ago, and I figured out that my mission is to supercharge reinvention, is what I call it. Basically giving people an open mind of something that they've always wanted to do and just didn't know how to do it, just opening up opportunities for people to reinvent themselves in a way, no matter if it's, a small reinvention or a large reinvention, like a complete career change into entrepreneurship or into corporate America. So, figuring that out was great. And then I meshed that with the book, and what I wanted, people to get out of it. So, and it just taught me a lot about myself.
I love that you had used this also to think about the business side. And that's something that we learned or taught in the Write My Book Bootcamp, because Adrian is actually one of the founding members of the Write My Book Bootcamp. And that's something that he loved was, I could create a business out of this too. That's cool. And figuring out how to do that. And actually, you are actually on those next steps, because you told me right before we started, you were working on your own podcast, correct?
Yes, I am. And that was really, part of that expansion of the business. There was a conversation about how do I structure this? Because, around the business, once again, there could be speaking, there could be the book, there could be podcasting dollars.
Right.
So how do I structure that as well? So I have a firm understanding of that now, which is great. But it's not just the book,
Right.
And I think that if you want to publish a book, I think that's fine. Just publish the book. But if you want to, build something out of this book, you have to create a business around it.
Right, exactly. And that's something that I say all the time, and it's on my website. A book is more than a book because there is so much you can do with it. It's just the introduction or the intro piece to learning about you or your business. So I love that. Well, what has helped you write better? Because, you've been through college, you're educated, and masters and all that good stuff. And, but what has helped you in writing better? Because writing for an audience and writing a research paper are two different things. And I'm sure you figured that out pretty quick.
Yes. Nothing about my undergrad and graduate degrees helped me write this book. I don't think. I think there's a couple of things, right? First is having great editors. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Also, always taking notes. And, I for this particular book, I've been taking notes for 2 years, like almost every day. Different notes, doing a lot of research, taking notes to research. And I use Evernote. And I think, one of our first conversations was about Evernote and the many things I could do with it. And I've been doing it. I've been taking personal notes. If I read an article in the newspaper, I tag the note, add it to my snippet, to my Evernote.
Mm-hmm.
And then, when I was ready to write the book, I had content.
Right.
I had things that I could reference back to, and I could put it into, I can take those 200 plus questions as well as all of the, current events and things of that sort, and start organizing a book around it versus starting from scratch.
Right.
Yeah. So I did not plan to write this book at all. It was, kind of an afterthought once I realized all this content that I had. And it was basically from taking notes. So using the Evernote that you taught me about and the methods of organizing and sorting through Evernote, I took, news articles when I saw a news article, and I snipped it to make sure that, I kept it in my notebook. And it was so helpful because, I could lay out all of these notes and then current events behind them. And it was a great start to the book versus starting from scratch.
Right.
And, Toastmasters is something that every time we go through like a boot camp or a class, it's like, oh, Toastmasters was so great for me because it helps you realize how to present to an audience.
Mm-hmm.
And how to capture them in a way that they continue to listen to you and be engaged. And I think that was really helpful in making my writing better. And then, of course, having great editors.
Exactly. Yes. Well, and I love what you're talking about, the research, because, and that's something that some people, don't think about. They start writing, and you can research before, and you can research during, and you can research, after you've written some, and then go back and add it. There's never a bad time to research, but it is always good to have some on the front end, just because then you have some meat to your bones of your book, and then you know where you're going. So I like that. I like that you had that, especially with the kind of book you are writing. It's pretty research heavy because you needed to have concrete evidence and proof of, okay, this is what happens here and this is what happens here. And if they ask this question, this is why they're asking this question. So I get that. And it does depend on the book. And sometimes it's good to just write, depending upon the topic. If it's something personal, it may be easier to just kind of write it out and then go back and do some research to see where you can add more layers of information to it. But with what you were doing, definitely research first was important. Well, tell us a little bit about your writing time. Did you have a consistent time you wrote? Did you write daily? Or what are some things that worked for you and some things that didn't? For those that can't see, which is everybody, because this is a podcast, Adrian's over here chuckling. So tell us about this.
Yes. So, when you have a 9-to-5 job and it's a business, a wife and a kid, nothing's ever normal. But I found myself writing either early in the morning or late at night. But I believe that I wrote better early in the morning. So, my daughter and my wife would get up around 8 o'clock, but I would get up around 5:45, 6 o'clock, and, I would get up, brew some tea and sit on the porch and I would write.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my quiet time to have some fresh eyes on what I've already written, as well as, all of the noise of the day hadn't started for me. So,
right.
My mind was fairly clear. And then, I ended up, as the book was coming to an end, doing more editing in the evening, mm-hmm. and then writing in the morning. So that was helpful for me because, it wasn't always writing or it wasn't always editing. And
right.
it made it, a little bit different for me. But it wasn't daily. It was not daily. But I tried to schedule the time. I tried to schedule it. So,
yeah.
That was helpful.
On average, what do you think when you were doing the intense writing part, on average, about how many hours do you think you were spending on writing and editing during the week? There's no wrong answer to this, by the way.
Intense part of it, maybe. Yeah, I know there is no wrong answer to writing a book. Probably 8 hours at least.
Yeah. And that's good. I mean,
2 hours a day, about 4 days a week.
right. And see, that's the thing that I love to tell people all the time. You've got to work it around your schedule. And, sometimes for some people that getting up and doing it first thing, it works for them. And some people it doesn't. Some people it's better at night. Some people's mid-afternoon, whatever works for you. And that's why I love to ask this question, because your answer may resonate with somebody who's listening and they're like, oh, I hadn't tried that yet. I might try that idea. And that way people get to hear the different viewpoints. And I love that because, like I said, there's no right or wrong answer. As long as you continue it. My whole thing is I don't want you writing for, 1 or 2 weeks and then take 3 months off because you either, you're overwhelmed or you're not sure what to do next, or life happens and, your job's crazy busy or something and you can't get to it. If you can do, like Grace talks about writing 15 minutes a day, and that was what on her podcast the other week, is, if that works for you, then do 15 minutes a day. Because at the end of the week, if you wrote 500 words over about a week's time, I think that was that's 2,500 words if you just did 5 days a week. Mm-hmm. So right there, that's almost a chapter, or it could be a chapter depending upon how long your chapters are. And so you got to think of it that way. And I love how you did that. Well, what words of advice or encouragement do you have for writers who may be struggling to write their book, or maybe they're not sure what the next step is? What advice do you have for them?
First of all, start.
Yes.
Create an audience of 2 to 3 people. You can interview them, ask them questions about your book. Well, I mean, I did it as a nonfiction book, right?
Right.
And I knew some people that were angel investors who just started. I knew some people who were entrepreneurs who were looking to get funding, and then also knew a couple people who wanted to become angel investors. So, what are you looking for? What questions would you want to ask as a founder? What's important to you when doing your pitch and your due diligence? Mm-hmm. And, I found a lot of answers just through knowing that I had an audience that I could reach out to. But also when I wrote the book, I tried to keep that audience in mind. Right. So if I'm sitting in the living room with, the guy who wants to be an angel investor but doesn't know how, what messages do I want to provide him? And, you're talking about, the writing piece of it too, is, writing daily, I think is great. But you also need to read as well.
Yes.
So reading other material will help you get your mind going and your juices flowing especially when you have writer's block. And if you're writing daily, you don't necessarily have to write your book. It could be some poetry or something that kind of, builds that creativity within you. And, sometimes I found myself writing poetry just to kind of get out how I feel for the week.
Right.
But I think that was both of those were helpful for me. But I'm telling you, it doesn't matter if it takes you, 90 days or 9 months or a year. Just get started and do it if it's something that you want to do. And, there's a community like yours who, everyone supports each other. And if you have any questions, you can always ask, on the Facebook group. And there's other people who feel just like you. They're, frustrated because they may have an idea, they don't know how to start or where to start. And there's just so many encouraging people in the book community in general. So tap into that.
Yes. And I think that's important, that you have a community and that support. It is because when you do get tired or kind of confused, or maybe you just want some feedback on what you're doing, that's a great place to go to and say, hey, I'm working on this. What do you think? And I have actually a couple different places for people to join Writers in Community. There's a free Facebook group called Write My Book. If you just search on Facebook, Write My Book, you will find it. But it's also a link on the website as well. But if you want to join one of our paid groups, we have a group that's a group program and one that's a membership program. And those are two different options to check out as well. So that's something to keep in mind. If you need community, that's something we offer, and like I said, you can always check out the free group and see if you like what we're doing, because we do similar and more things in our paid group as well. But I love that you are almost done, Adrian, and how you have
Me too.
grown so much through all of this, because I feel like a proud mama bear who's been on the journey with you, and that you're about to launch into the world on your own little 2 feet with your book. And so, but I think it's going to be great. And for those, I don't know that we've said the name of your book. Have we said the name of your book yet? I don't think we have.
No, we haven't. Gosh, it is called After the Pitch. It's a guide for new investors and new founders to gain funding and make smart investment choices.
Coming to Amazon and your bookstore soon.
Yes.
But when he has that ready, and so I do encourage you, if this is a topic that you're interested in, to follow Adrian, and he will keep you posted when the book is ready. And I appreciate working with you, Adrian. He's been one of my biggest cheerleaders, and so I appreciate all that he's done to spread the word about the Write Coach and Write My Book Bootcamp and everything that we do. So thank you, and I appreciate it, and I hope you have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of The Write Hour. Our goal is to help you achieve your writing dreams.
You are one step closer to write your book.
Learn how to get the book out of your head with the 4 steps we teach our clients. Sign up for the free email series at thewritecoach.biz. The link is in the show notes.
The 4 steps help you clarify your focus, create and organize your content, and complete your book. We share tips on the writing process, and you can download the writing planner to track your progress.
Don't let fear and overwhelm keep you from writing your book.
It's time to write your book.